All right, welcome to Corporate Services on the 14th of April 2022. I declare this meeting open at 9 a.m. Do I have any apologies?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councillor Abbott.
Do I have a mover? Seconded. Can I call for disclosures of interest?
None received, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Public participation?
Nil.
Righto, on to business item corporate 04.1, financial summary and investment report. Over to you, Wayne.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're looking at the quarter or the month ended March 2022. So what we'll do is we'll go down through the report as it is. At the moment, so the financial information summary that's on page 2 more or less indicates that year to date to the end of March 22, we had a positive variance of actuals to budget of 2.08 million, which is a comparison of about 154,000 at the period ended February 22. We noted in the meeting on February, in the February Corporate Services meeting, which was held in March, that we're going to do a review of the business services operations and just seeing how they're all going to fall out. Because of the close proximity of all the month end here and also with the public holidays and also the Warbirds over Scone event, waiting on the invoices and everything to come in, we will present that at the next corporate services meeting. So we'll go through that at that meeting in May. Just to give a high level overview of the summary position, what makes up the positive variance of $2.08 million. If we look down through the main contributors, which is effectively with the revenue side of things, $89,000, which is very, very close to budget overall. But there's a lot of movement within the different service areas. What we have is children's services is revenues lower than budget by about 283,000. Obviously, the effects of COVID in the early part of the financial year, and also we've had a lot of staff vacancies in regards to some key roles over there that has kept the numbers lower than what we anticipated. So we'll continue to monitor that as it comes through. Sale yard revenues down by about 136,000. Obviously, the cattle throughput numbers are still a little bit down today. And we're getting a bit of a tick upwards come around January, but due to the wet weather, it's come back down a little bit over the last couple of months. So hopefully over the next 3 months, we should see some improvement in our numbers going through the facility. Operational, the airport operational revenues are down by 110K. Lower landing fees coming through, but also we've got a timing issue with some of our invoicing. So we'll go through and review that invoicing coming into the mix. RMS State Roads is lower by 145,000. Just had limited, as mentioned earlier in other meetings, limited work orders coming through for works outside of maintenance over on the Golden Highway. But we've recently received a few requests, so hopefully that'll increase over the next quarter to bring it back into alignment with the budget. Local roads revenue is actually higher than budget for the end of March by $1 million. And it's mainly due to, we've got an advance payment for our flood disaster relief. So we're going through itemising all our defects at the moment, but the government's now punched out $1 million to council to help fund that emergency works that we've been undertaking. It doesn't move away from actually going through the process of doing the defect notices and everything on the actual works that we have to do. Water supply usage obviously is lower by nearly $300,000. Obviously, with the wet weather, the water consumption is reduced down over the last 3 billing cycles. Good. Moving in then to the non-operating revenue and expenditure. Here we've got a little bit behind by about $500,000. And there's 2 main factors that happen with the non-operating area, and that's the internal fleet hire and also quarry revenue. Obviously, over the wet periods have had an effect on utilisations coming through for our internal fleet hire, and also the actual materials coming from our pits. So hopefully over the next quarter, we'll pick up obviously with some capital works programs that are coming on tap rather quickly at the moment. Operating expenditure, here we're a little bit overspent by about $250,000, 230,000. The main drivers behind that was Government Place. Obviously, we've spoke about Government Place constantly at a number of our meetings. Its costs are higher by about 280,000 to date. Waste management is lower by about 80,000, just with the state government levies and a few staff vacancies earlier in the financial year has gave a bit of a saving there. Bridge maintenance is lower by 115,000. Only minor repairs have been required so far. Obviously, with our bridge replacement program, we haven't had to do too much repairs on our bridges, but Allen Bridge, which we received some settlement monies for, that will come on track for the next quarter. So we'll be doing the repair work on that bridge. RMS state roads, obviously with the lower revenue streams from the individual price works orders that we do, the costs are also lower. So that's down by 100,000.
Sorry, Mr. Phelps, through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Phelps, the money from the insurance company for Allen Bridge, was that the entirety, or have we had to wear some of the bill?
That was the entirety.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Moving into the regional and local roads maintenance, it's higher by about $650,000. And effectively, it's a lot of the flood damage work that had to be undertaken. So obviously with the disaster relief money, that will cover a lot of that cost coming through, and we'll see a vote in the mix for that $1 million. The main driver behind why we're positive to budget at this point in time, at the end of March, is the capital works program. So the capital works is about $2.7 million underspent at this point to the end of March. The main contributors to that has been our storm water replacement program. It's been lower by about 150,000. A couple of projects there are actually going to be, or one main project for 100,000 of that will be completed at Sedgenhoe and Graham Streets. But we've got also a deferral of another project for the other 60,000. Scone Emergency Operations Centre fit out project's continuing. We're expecting it to be completed by year end. So hopefully it'll catch up coming through. It's just a timing issue in regards to the expend. Merriwall Showground Shed and Camp Draft, that works is currently behind schedule, but the expectation is that that will be completed by year end. The airport development is higher by about 160,000. Obviously the project's all but complete. The terminal building is now open, as well as the aviation centre. But we've still got a little bit of works around the rectification works around the runways and so forth to be completed for that total project to be finalised. The reseal program is currently behind budget by about 288,000. So obviously this program has now been completed because of the conditions of the weather. We can't go too far beyond now because it's too cold. So we've, as we'll see, there's been some votes coming through to put that into an RA for next year.
And that was the question I was just about to ask you. Is that going forward? Are we resealing more roads next year?
Our program next year will be the same as what we're doing now for this year. Some of this money that's going into an RA will help fund some rehabilitation works for other roads, though. We're going to put that saving aside and use that as our contribution towards some grant funding that we've put applications in to do rehabilitation works.
Okay, so that's like for like funding on that arrangement, or does that go forward into, like you say, rehabilitation that includes drainage and
that includes drainage and all the rehabilitation works for the roads and so forth. So it still stays within the road network itself. With our resealing program, we'll continue to monitor that and make sure that we hit the mark next year. And if we have some savings elsewhere next year, we'll put that into the resealing program.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Wayne.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just the 2.7 because I am a
Mhm.
financial Adonis. The 2.7 that we haven't spent on the roads budget, will that then be able to be moved into next year's budget?
The 2.7 is overall capital works budget.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
can we roll that into next year's capital budget?
Yeah, so that does come through. So as you'll see in our votes when we come through the actual further part of the report, there's a lot of deferrals of projects that will be referred back into next financial year.
Yeah.
So a lot of the underspends that we're seeing now is funded works. So that just rolls into next year to be undertaken in next year's program. And then obviously we have to look at next year's program to push that back out another year on the basis of we're not overburdening ourselves in our capital works schedule.
Thank you.
Okay. The other couple of items on here, Bunnan Road upgrades lower by 212,000. It's on schedule to be completed by year end, so that's a good result. Our water supply mains renewal and replacement and extension programs that we've got a tender out at the moment. The actual project schedule's behind, and we're proposing to defer a considerable portion of that into next financial year. And the renewals, sewer renewals and replacement, obviously is behind as well by about 600,000. The lower requirements for renewals to date. So we propose to defer a significant portion of that to next year. And obviously it will be used to do sewer works for next year's program.
Yep. Just on those sewer works, and I'm sorry, Karen's not here. It's probably better directed at her, but I see these, we see it's quite visible around the place at the moment. We're doing a lot of waterworks. We're digging a lot of roads up to do waterworks. I'm just wondering how coordinated we are with our roads maintenance and the sewer renewals and how that's working financially with obviously the sewer operation going forward. And I would hope that we do roads operations afterwards.
Yeah, through the chair. Obviously, we look at the program and seeing when we're doing a road rehabilitation works coming through or road repairs and so forth. We talk in amongst the infrastructure roads crews as well as the infrastructure water and sewer guys. So obviously there's a discussion between them. The overarching factor on top of that is the strategic assets team that would have a coverage over all the assets. So in the past, we've sort of like haven't fully utilised the conglomeration of all the departments, but moving forward, that's what we're intending to undertake.
No, thank you, Mr. Phelps. It's just something that is a bugbear to many people with the bump. So it's great to hear that you're getting those systems into place.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So overall, as you can see on the bottom there, $2.8 million positive variance to budget. Just moving in through the budget summary, our net variations for the month is zero. Obviously, we'll be doing a review of all the operational services coming through for next month, but we're still keeping within our budget streams. Our bank funds and investment report. So at the moment, we've got just over $30 million in total funds, of which just under $30 million is in investments. So we're putting money into our investment portfolio. The capital expenditure report. At the end of March, we've revised the capital works program down again by just under $9 million. So it's down to $31.8 million. That's a comparison to last month, which was 40.5, and the overall start of the year, which was 64.8, which was an unrealistic number initially when we went into the new financial year. So based on the $20 million spend that we've spent 63% so far. So we effectively still got a bit of work to do. So obviously from 20 million to 31 million, we've still got 10 million to spend in 3 months.
Through you, Mr. Chair, how much of that 10 million is they've done the work, we're waiting for the invoice?
Very little.
Okay.
Yep. Moving into the KPI side of things. So with our KPIs, we effectively have gone a little bit backwards from the last month. So at the moment, we've got off track about 44 KPIs out of 125, which is 35%. So obviously we're seriously looking at why we have declined. And effectively, we have put that through the SMG meeting, and they're seriously looking at why that decline has happened, and looking at measures to see how we'll project that forward to the end of June. So we need to have an idea of how everything's going to fall out by year end. Could be a timing thing with regards to a couple of them, a couple of those KPIs that have fallen off track, but we'll just do some forecasting forward and get some of the managers' responses in regards to achieving the KPIs by year end.
Thank you, Mr. Phelps. And that the timeline on seeing the result of that meeting there.
The corporate services.
Yeah, look, we're looking at each one of them. There's certainly some of them will turn around, but the fact is that some of them won't. The business has been affected by COVID in terms of visitation numbers, and the drought's still affecting the sale yards, so that the KPIs on the sale yard numbers will still be down. But there certainly is some things that we will be working on to get in place by June 30, and I'm pretty confident that the number of 33 will reduce significantly before June 30.
Yeah, so you're pretty confident it's a COVID related.
Yeah. Some of them are, some of them aren't. We have identified the one which are COVID related, but some of them are not. And we'll be looking at the ones that we can fix by June 30, which we have control over, and we'll be working on those. I think going into next year, in the next Depop, the version of it, we're looking at these indicators and just working the difference between which are actually performance indicators and statistics. I think there's a lot of statistics in there which we've actually identified as performance indicators, which aren't true performance indicators, but that's a discussion for the next round of the Depop development.
No, that sounds positive. Thank you, Director.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. So just after following that, we more or less just move into our attachments that we've got here. So effectively, we've got the overall summary of the service areas in regards to the different categories of operating revenue and expenditures and capital works expenditure. Now, as you see in those pages, the requested votes there is quite numerous numbers. So obviously we'll have a look at those very shortly, but we more or less come back to a zero at the bottom line. And then if you move over to our next page, which is on page 12, you'll see the plethora of votes. So we've gone through and itemised out what projects we do not believe that we'll be completing by year end and deferring those into next year. So obviously with the Depop being prepared at the moment, we have to bring these onto tap now. So we've gone through and isolated out those projects that we don't think that will be completed. So let's just have a bit of a squiz at those if you wish for a couple of minutes. Okay, any questions in regards to those votes? No. Okay, so we'll just keep moving on. The portions of the report, we've got our bank rec, which is our financial report on page 17. So it just indicates a little bit of a graph there of how our funds have gone over the course of the year. Obviously, we receive a lot of money in the beginning of the year and use it over the course of the year. The next page along on 18 is a list of our investments held. So it more or less indicates what our investments are held and what interest rates we've been able to achieve for those investments. And the proportion of how much we've got tied up with each of those investment houses. Obviously, we've seen a little bit of a uptick at the moment in our interest rates. We've got 1.4% there as our big driver, but that's for a 3-year period. But we've noticed in the market recently, over the last month and a half, that there is increases in rates coming through. So we're starting to get some good rates coming back, or reasonable rates, I suppose you could say.
I see there's $6 million there coming up pretty shortly that
Correct.
you can take advantage of.
Yep.
That's really good news.
Totally. Then just moving into our loan schedule on page 19, more or less indicates what principal's outstanding at this point in time. So it's just under, it's about $36.5 million owing in debt. And then, as mentioned before, with the summary of the KPIs, we've got a list of all our red KPIs coming through. So just to more or less put them all onto a couple of pages so that they're all together, so you can see what indicators are currently off track and commentary around those ones that are off track.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could you indicate which one is the COVID related?
We can put an indicator on the future ones, but the ones that effectively are COVID related would be your ones in regards to the accounts receivables greater than 90 days. Obviously, we had our debt recovery was curtailed there for a little while.
Yeah.
So we've only just gone back into debt recovery. Our early learning centre and family daycare, obviously with the children's services. The caravan parks and camping grounds is another one. The tourism and area promotion is another one that's affected. So there's two in regards to those areas. The community halls and centres, obviously with the actual hiring out of those halls and centres. Our public libraries, obviously with restrictions on our public libraries. We've also had reduced numbers coming through for those areas. That's effectively the ones that are affected predominantly by COVID.
Probably the health inspections through the director.
Health inspections, yep.
Yep, because we haven't been able to do that during the COVID period, and we're catching up now, but that's another COVID affected indicator.
We might for our next meeting, we can put on there the actual ones that are COVID related. So we might put an indicator on there so you can highlight it.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea just to get us back to normality.
Yes.
I think, have we got any more questions? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll go back to recommendation 4.1. Got a mover on that?
I'll move that.
I'll second that. And we'll move on to recommendation 4.2. Please, Christian.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Mr. Phelps, I'll redirect it to you.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Just a quick note before we start. We had an attachment that we slotted into the actual report that we had a bit of a problem with the actual agenda compilation. So we've got a couple of appendices that are actually on the online version at the moment. And also there's a couple of extra pages inside the actual report that is doubled up. So we'll go through those and I'll highlight those as we come through. We will rerun the agenda though to put the right page numbers and everything on that and put it back up on the website coming through. So we'll start off. So if I'll just continue to talk through the actual report. It's quite a long report. So any questions, just make a noise and we can stop and have a discussion around it. Asset management's our first one off the cab, and it's page 34 and 35. There's no votes or surrenders here. We're a little bit underspent at the moment, and the main areas that we're underspent is in our admin costs for our staff in the assets team. Obviously, they're being utilised to do a lot of capital works projects, so the operational expenditure is a saving. The other area is the road safety officer. We've been without a road safety officer now for probably nearly 6 months. We've just secured somebody into that role. So it's a program that is funded 50% by Transport for New South Wales, but also our neighbouring shires as well. They provide funds towards the employment of that person.
Just on my ignorance here, what's a road safety officer do?
Yeah, through the chair. The road safety officers effectively go around and has safety programs. So they may have free cup of coffee, those type of things. They look at the dangerous areas within the Shire and make recommendations in regards to safety issues on our roads.
Yeah, great.
They would be quite beneficial at the moment.
So a lot of the programs that they do are funded by Transport 100%. So we'll propose a new safety measure and Transport will say, yep, no, we'll do that. Moving into communications on page 36, here no votes or surrenders. A little bit underspent in this one as well, just with our had a few vacancies in the earlier part of the year. So there's a little bit of saving there. KPI on 37, a green indicator there, so nothing to highlight. Corporate services, no votes or surrenders coming through. A little bit overspent here, just in our general expenses area. Just we had to engage a couple of professional consultants with some work. So that's the only movement there. We have one red indicator though on page 39 in regards to our policies. The policies are improving, and we plan to get that back to the satisfactory level by year end.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, is that red KPI? I get that it needs to come to corporate services, but is it more of an ARIC thing than it is a corporate services thing?
Well, I guess it's not a corporate services, it's a council-wide thing.
Yeah.
I guess it's homed in corporate services, but it's policies right across the board. ARIC do look at these indicators, and as mentioned earlier, so does the SMG. But it is a fairly important indicator. I think, just as a general observation, our review dates are too quick on our policies. In this term of council, I think we will review the dates that policies need to review to later on in the term of council.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on to our next service area, which is our customer service area on page 40. No votes or surrenders, nearly spot on budget, so nothing to highlight there. And our KPI is a green indicator, so there's nothing to highlight there. Depot operations on page 42 to 43, no votes or surrenders coming through. A little bit overspent at the moment, just with regards to our cleaning and building maintenance area. So we'll have a look at those to make sure that we try and keep those within budget by year end. Apart from that, there's nothing else to highlight there. Page 44 and 45, financial services, no votes or surrenders coming through. Overall, we're pretty well tracking on budget. There's a few ups and downs within the operational area, but overall it's tracking okay. Next page on page 46 is our on-cost report. More or less we look at, with a lot of our wages, putting money off for our super workers comp and leave entitlements. So as you can see there, we're pretty well tracking on budget overall year to date. Against our actual year to date budget, a little bit higher than that by about 10%. But obviously with COVID and so forth, it makes it difficult at this point. Not a lot of people are taking their leave. So hopefully over the course of the next 12 months, that should come back into alignment. KPI on page 47, it's a green indicator there, so nothing to highlight there. Fleet management on pages 48 to 49, no votes or surrenders coming through. Here we're $500,000 behind, and predominantly that is made up of the internal fleet hire. So obviously once that internal fleet hire starts going back the other way and comes back into parity, that will improve our bottom line position.
Just on that, is that a motor vehicle lease, or is that the machinery lease?
That's effectively the internal fleet hire is our plant that's actually out on job sites. So it's our heavy kit. So it's all our dozers and graders and tipper trucks, truck and dogs, but also our internal light vehicle fleet as well.
Okay, great.
So,
Thank you.
And the other big mover in there is our fuel costs. So obviously with a spike in fuel prices, it's jumped out of the ground. So hopefully we'll see some sort of benefit from the government's reduction in the excise tax. Moving into our KPIs on page 50 to 51, both green indicators there, so nothing to highlight there. General management, no votes or surrenders coming through here on page 52. A little bit of overspend in our salaries area at the moment. So obviously we'll continue to monitor that. So nothing else to highlight there. The KPIs on page 53, a green indicator, and that's just compliance with the IPNR. So that's no problems there. So nothing else to highlight. Page 54, governance and risk. We've got no votes or surrenders coming through there. A little bit underspent at the moment, just mainly with our admin area with our salaries and training costs. Obviously with our manager of governance taking maternity leave and a bit of a changeover, we've had a few savings overall. With our KPI on page 55, we've got a red indicator there. Now this is a timing one overall, because the ARIC meeting was held the first week in April, when we initially scheduled it for the end of March. So we would have hit the mark had we gone ahead with it. Human resources on page 56, no votes or surrenders coming through. Sitting okay against budget, a little bit up on budget, but there's a lot of movers in there. We've been successful in getting a lot of traineeship rebates, which has been great. But we've had a bit of overspends in our employment area, in our admin costs and HR projects area. And obviously our work health and safety is a little bit overspent at the moment based on the fact of COVID and COVID related things that we had to undertake. Moving on to page 57, our workforce management plan is a red indicator at the moment. It's starting to get a bit of traction now, so hopefully it'll be done by the end of June.
Well, that needs to be adopted by June 30. So that's one of the indicators that will definitely be green.
Yep, correct.
It's an easy win.
Yep. Moving into our information services, no votes or surrenders coming through here on page 58. A little bit in front of budget at this point in time, just with our admin costs, with some under budget in our salaries and training costs, but also our network computer upgrade is a little bit behind at the moment. So we've identified a number of upgrades and their completion is currently being reviewed at this point. Indicators coming through on page 59 and 60. We've got one red indicator, which is our IT steering group committee meeting annually. So that will definitely be green by year end. So we'll go through and have a look at that. Infrastructure support on page 61, no votes or surrenders here. A little bit overspent at the moment, just in regards to our salaries area. And it was mainly to do with additional costs that we had to incur to appoint our Director of Infrastructure Services. So we went through a recruitment agency. Moving into revenue services on page 62, no votes or surrenders coming through here. A little bit in front of budget. We're a little bit up in our increase in our debt recovery action. So we've got a little bit more money coming through there, and also our section 603 certificates in regards to a lot of transfer of properties within the property market. So it's been quite buoyant at this point in time. So there's a bit of movement in that property market. Moving into our KPIs on 63 through to 64. Here we've got one green indicator and a red indicator, and the red indicator was the one that we highlighted earlier, just in regards to the indebtedness of our 90-day receivables. Obviously now with our debt recovery action now commencing again, we hopefully will see that start to come back down again. Page 65, that's just in the wrong spot. So we'll just ignore that one coming through. That's one of the ones that we've just got a few anomalies. Through our stores purchasing area on page 66, no votes or surrenders coming through, nearly spot on budget overall. So there's nothing to highlight there. A bit of a saving in our admin costs, but we've had a bit of extra spend in regards to our software programs around our inventory. KPI on page 67, it's an amber indicator at the moment. This one we'll definitely be reviewing coming up over the next quarter to bring it back underneath the target of 820,000. So it should turn to green. Sustainability on page 68. Here we've got a little vote going through, and it's money to do with a rebate we received from the Carbon Bank for our LED street lighting rollout. So we've banked that off into our renewables RA, so that'll be put aside for any projects moving forward.
Well done, team, through the chair.
Yes, no, the Manager of Sustainability and Waste has done quite well in regards to obtaining a lot of those rebates, which has been effectively 80-odd thousand for this current financial year, which is quite handy for our future endeavours into renewables. Moving into our KPIs on page 69, 2 green indicators there, so there's nothing else to highlight there. Moving into our community services area, on page 70, our overall admin area is no votes or surrenders coming through. A little bit underspent in our salaries area again, and training, and training's been a little bit curtailed by the COVID effect overall, so a bit of a saving coming in. KPIs on page 71 and 72, 2 green indicators coming through, so no, nothing else to highlight there.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Why is Clean Up Australia expenses under community services and not sustainability?
Probably a historical thing, I believe, Councillor, coming through. So, and it is more driven from community services, the Clean Up Australia.
Yeah, okay. You accountants,
We might,
I don't know.
through the chair, we might look at that for next year's.
Yep.
People. Yep.
It just makes more sense to me.
Okay. Right, yeah, moving down to Gumman Place Hostel, 73 to 74. Got a small vote and surrender coming through, just to put a bit of money in for some design works that was undertaken over at the facility. As you can see, that we're well and truly behind budget here. So as highlighted earlier, we've got a fair bit of costs that we've had to expend in the facility over there, and it's something that will be a report to the council obviously will be taken up in regards to its operations. Moving into the KPI side of things, we've got 2 green indicators coming through, but we have 1 red indicator, and a bit of a driver behind the lower revenue streams that we've been able to generate from the facility is that we at the end of March we had a couple of vacant rooms over there, so obviously that has an effect overall on the operations.
Just on that, have we got any interest in those 2 rooms, Director Pringle?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I understand we have a respite resident in there at the moment in one of the rooms, and we try and use those rooms for that purpose when they're vacant. And we do have a waiting list of people that would like to come into the facility, but those people aren't quite ready at this point in time.
Sure. Thank you.
Sorry, just through you, Mr. Chair. Those people that aren't quite ready, and fair enough, you know, no one wants to be pushed. But have we gone down the list? You know, you might be number one on the list, but have we gone down the list and number 10 all of a sudden becomes number one and they get the bed?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, I believe our staff are doing that. They go through that list.
I wonder, through you, Mr. Chair, I wonder if we should talk to our brothers and sisters in Murrayvale or, you know, if they've got anyone, I'm talking about regionally, so Denman as well, even Musbrook, have they got anyone smacking on the door saying we really need a bed? Well, we could help them out until there's one available for over there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly look at those options to see whether we can find, you know, people that are waiting to come into an aged care facility that may be interested. So we can certainly look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving down now into the independent living units on page 78 and 79. No votes or surrenders here, a little bit behind budget, and it's mainly due to our revenue streams, just with the Miranda fire and the renovations that have been done up there for those two units out of the 8. We had lower revenue coming through. We actually are talking to the insurance company at the moment to see whether or not we can recover some of that revenue streams back. Moving into our KPIs on page 80, a green indicator there, so nothing else to highlight there. Children's Services Early Learning Centre on page 81 and 82. No votes or surrenders coming through at the moment. We're a little bit behind budget at the moment by about 80-odd thousand. And the main driver behind that is our revenue stream. So obviously, as mentioned earlier, our revenue streams due to COVID has been reduced significantly, and also the staff vacancies. A little bit of an offsetter against the revenue down by 176,000 is about $100,000 saving in wages. So we have the other offsetter going through. Moving into our KPIs on page 83, obviously with the lower number of students through the facility, we have a red indicator coming into the mix. On page 84, the family daycare area, again, there's no votes or surrenders coming through. And again, we're a little bit behind budget here. And the main driver behind that, again, is the revenue side of things. So our childcare subsidy is offset by our carer payments. So it offsets each other 100%. But the thing that actually is making it a little bit less than budget is our user fees and charges, which are admin levies for our children. So that covers off the wages for a lot of the staff in the family daycare area. So hopefully we'll get some more educators on and increase that revenue streams up going forward. KPIs on 85, red indicator there. So as you can see, we targeted to have 50 full-time equivalent students with educators, and at the moment we've only got 32. So that's the main driver. Social protection on page 86. Here we've got no votes or surrenders coming through, and it's pretty well on track all the way down through the mix. On page 87 through to 89, we have our KPIs, and we have 3 green indicators coming through. So we're meeting all the areas in regards to social protection areas. Our next few pages there on page 90 through to 93, effectively ignore those. They're just a double up coming through the mix. That's going back through the children's services area again. So we'll go to 95, which is youth services. So here we've got a small vote coming through on both sides of the ledger. We were successful in obtaining a grant for $10,000 towards a new program for a summer holiday program, which has been well received. So overall, we've put through those votes. Overall, year to date, we're a little bit underspent at the moment, mainly in regards to our drop-in centres. So our drop-in centres on page 96, as you can see there, we're a little bit underspent there. So that's the main reason for the overall underspend. KPI side of things on 97 through to 99, We've got 3 green indicators there, so we're hitting the mark with a lot of our youth services programs coming through. Page 100, again, that's the last one we just need to ignore. That's an item that jumped in there, so ignore that one there. Moving then into 101, which is our economic affairs, the camping areas and caravan parks. Here we've got no votes or surrenders coming through. A little bit overspent at the moment in this area. Money around caravan park expenses and a new item in there that we've had, which is the RV camping spot down at Bill Rose Complex. So they're the costs associated to that. We'll look at bringing in possible votes for that once all the costs are known that are going to come through before the year end. So it's one of those ones that we'll have a look at for a forecast forward. Moving into our KPIs on 103 to 104, got one amber indicator, but also a red indicator. And the red indicator is the number of caravan park sites booked. Now, that's obviously affected by COVID. So it's one of those tainted KPIs. Moving into Community Connect services on 105, no votes or surrenders coming through here. A little bit in front of budget at the moment with a bit of extra money coming through for our Centrelink agency fees, which is quite good up at Miranda. Moving into economic promotions on page 106 to 107, no votes or surrenders coming through here. A little bit in front of budget at the moment. Obviously, we've had a few savings there with the manager of business services untimely health issues. So we've more or less had a few savings of that in that area coming through. So that's affected on the bottom line. Moving into our KPIs on page 108 to 109, we've got one amber indicator and a green indicator. The amber indicator is in regards to grant funding secured. So we're all but to the target level. So hopefully by year end, we'll get a lot more grant funding coming through, which effectively for full year is about $5 million. So hopefully we'll secure some more grant funding, be it the election period now. Moving into the private works on 110, here no votes or surrenders coming through. A little bit overspent on the budget at the moment, and predominantly around the expenditure side of the equation there. And what that means is that we're probably doing a lot of works and the invoicing has to be raised for those works. So obviously it's work in progress. As you can see, our actual level of return is still sitting at 20%. So it's a green indicator. Moving into real estate on 112 to 113. Here we've got a few votes going through and surrenders. We've got a vote coming through for some grant funding we secured for the business case at Campbell's Corner. And obviously the offsetter against that is our in the capital expenditure area of a 50 grand, which is to undertake the business case review. Also in our admin costs, we've had a surrender of our funds in there and moved it down into other commercial properties. It's just an allocation issue with regards to the employee that was doing, or the lands assistant officer that was doing a broader portfolio, property portfolio review. So it was just more or less a budget thing. Yeah. Accounting thing, yes. Overall, we're a little bit in front of budget at the moment. Then that's mainly due to the grant funding we received in advance for the business case. Moving into our KPI side of things in our property area, we've got 2 green indicators, 3 red ones and an amber one. So our red indicators is more or less going through completing a strategic review of our property portfolio, which is underway. So we should be able to hopefully achieve that by year end. The Crown Lands completion, this is one where it's felt like being pushed back by Crown Lands themselves, because I know they can see the multitude of work that needs to be undertaken in that Crown Land space. So obviously it may not be achieved by year end. But that's no fault of council, because Crown Lands have actually reviewing our submitted reviews of our Crown Lands management items, but they haven't come back to us. So we're sort of like, it's one of those ones that we're waiting upon the department.
Yeah,
So
we've
there's no-
done, sorry.
No, no.
through you, Mr. Chair. We've done the initial classifications of Crown Lands, submitted that well within the due date, and we haven't heard back from them. Their original date to have all the plans of management done for all councils was, I think, 30 June last year. That date has been indefinitely postponed because I don't think any councils have met that date, and they don't have the resources to process all those that data. So it's on hold at the moment. So that's a KPI that we won't achieve, but I don't believe that we have any control over.
Yep.
Sure.
And
Thank
it's
you.
the same with the native title one as well, through the chair. So the native title one is exactly in the same boat. The other one there, that's the amber one, which is more or less in regards to our commercial and residential leases, which we've made a huge impact on over the last month and a half. So we'll bring that back into alignment by year end. Sale yards on pages 120 to 121. Here we've got no votes or surrenders coming through. Overall, we're a little bit behind budget by the 130,000, which is predominantly our fees and charges. So that's the main driver behind that one there. Moving into the KPIs on pages 122 to 124, we've got two red indicators and a green indicator. The red indicators are our sales during this month compared to last year's March 2021. It's was lower, so that therefore we got a red indicator there. And also the total throughput happening on page 124, it's a little bit behind budget at the moment.
Mr. Phelps, there, just what's our break even? Is it here? What's our break even throughput on sale yards?
Throughput sits around about the 50 to 55 mark.
Right.
Yeah, 50,000 heads will get us a break even. 55 will give us a little bit of a surplus.
Yeah, we're budgeted for 35.
Correct. Yeah.
That we haven't even achieved that.
So that would 35. That'd be 700 cattle a week.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah, fluctuates.
normally
we're getting a little bit around that figure. Sometimes a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but that's about the figure average.
yeah, the break even point is effectively about 1,000 head per week going through the yards. Yeah. Moving into our Scone golf course area. Here we've got no votes or surrenders coming through. A little bit overspent at the moment, but we've had some additional costs related to the flood damage that happened down on the course. So obviously they will be included in our flood damage defects area, and we'll have some of that $1 million will go into the golf course area to cover those costs. Moving into the tourism area and promotion on pages 126 to 127, no votes or surrenders coming through here. A little bit overspent at the moment, so we're just going through reviewing some of our costs that are happening in there in regards to our admin area, which is our staff, and the building maintenance area. So obviously we'll be going through that over the course of the next month to work out why there's a major overspend in those areas. Apart from that, everything else is pretty well tracking along on target. The KPI side of things, we've got one green indicator and two red indicators. Obviously, this is the one with COVID effect. So the number of people coming through the visitor centres and the referrals to accommodation from the visitor centre as well. Apart from that, there's nothing else to highlight. Moving into our noxious plants and vermin control on 131, pretty well spot on budget, so nothing to highlight there. Stormwater management on pages 132 to 133. Here we've got a few deferrals of some projects that have gone back into an RA to be brought back in for next year. So we've got stormwater replacement program for 120,000. It's just been deferred to the Belmore Street works. And also there's $20,000 that we had allocated for McQueen Street as well. So those obviously will go back into next year's Depop and come back through the RA. Overall, we're underspending this area by about nearly $200,000. So, and the main drivers behind that is our capital works area of those two the deferred stormwater replacement program, which is 60,000, But also in there is the Sedgenhoe Graham Street one, which it's only been delayed due to timing. So that'll be completed by year end. So it's about $100,000 there. The other item in there to bring it up to the 200 is the drainage maintenance. So it's been lower than anticipated to date, but obviously we'll be undertaking a lot of drainage maintenance over the course of the next few months. Moving into our KPIs on page 134 to 136, here we've got 2 red and 1 amber indicator coming through. The first red indicator is in regards to our capital works program. Obviously, we're behind, so you've got a red indicator there. And our second red indicator is in regards to complaints about the drainage overflows. And obviously, with our major weather events that we've been experienced over the last 3 months, has created a big spike in those complaints. So obviously, we've got a lot of drainage maintenance to undertake, which is what the money, the dollars, is there for. So that's why we'll be undertaking. Moving into our street cleaning area on 137. Here we've got no votes or surrenders. We're a little bit overspent here in our street cleaning, mainly in regards to some higher waste landfill charges coming in. Apart from that, nothing else to highlight. Moving into the KPIs, a green indicator there, so nothing to highlight there. Waste management on 139 through to 141. Here we've brought back in some votes. The first one there is some grant funding that we're going to receive in regards to our green FOGO bin implementation. We initially took it out at the beginning of the year, thinking that that program wouldn't get any legs, but since then we've had a bit of traction, and that will be implemented before the end of the financial year. So we've brought that back into the mix. What that has done also is put a vote on the other side of the ledger into the capital works program area there. So we've got the FOGO bin acquisitions to happen before year end. So we'll be spending money there. There's a few other movements in there of deferrals into next year. So we've had a few delays with a couple of our programs. So like the moving bay and also just with some initial plans for the landfill. But we've also, on the other side of the ledger, is we've progressed a few other programs like the environmental management plan and also the transfer stations at Miranda and Renewal. So we've been doing a lot of concept designs and so forth for those 2 projects, which will get a bit of traction next year to be completed. Overall, we're a little bit we're in front of budget by 100,000, which is great, and mainly due to a little bit extra in our revenue streams, just through scrap metal sales, but also we've got a bit of a timing issue in regards to our waste levy charges. So there's about $60,000 there, which will be effectively a month behind. But apart from that, nothing else to highlight.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, on that. So scrap metal sales, great. When we go to FOGO and that becomes a marketable entity, will we see returns on that?
Sorry, through Mr. Chair, what do you mean by returns on that?
So when we get scrap metal, we take it and we scrap it and we get paid for that. FOGO is essentially going into compost, or will be turned into compost and then sold or on-sold. So will we see returns for that?
No, we won't. Not for the organics. No.
Okay. Just on that, Director, how long is that contract with the FOGO at Muswellbrook, and in the future, say 20 years later, is that an area we might be able to make some revenue from?
I'll have to take that one on notice, Mr. Chair, and get back to you on the time frame. I think it was only for 12 months or 2 years at the most. It was a short-term contract.
Yeah.
Because at this stage, we're not sure on the timing on Muswellbrook Council's composting facility.
Yep. So I think through council, I think there'll be an expression of interest that will go back up through a report to council in regards to the FOGO processing plant, and details would obviously be in that report. Okay. Moving into the KPIs for the waste, 4 green indicators I mentioned earlier, so nothing to highlight there. On 146, we've got rates, grants and interest. No votes or surrenders coming through here. Nearly spot on budget overall, so nothing to highlight there. KPIs on page 147, a green indicator there, so nothing to highlight there. Council services on pages 148. Here we've got a few votes and surrenders coming through, just moving a bit of money around. More or less got a vote going in for the additional costs of our injection facility that we had over at Miranda, the pop-up event that happened. So that more or less has come out of our general expenses area, which was underspent. But also we've put it through a vote to cover off the balance of the iPad purchases for councillors with the new term coming on tap. And that more or less has come back out of your mayors and elected members savings that happened with regards to a couple of vacancies that we held in those positions coming up to the elections. So overall, we're still a little bit in front of budget. So apart from that, nothing else to highlight there. Health services on page 150, no votes or surrenders coming through. We're a little bit in front of budget at the moment, just mainly in regards to salaries and wages in our health inspections and on-site sewer management. We've had a few staff vacancies in that area at this point in time. KPIs on page 151. Here we've got a red indicator, obviously with the vacancies that have occurred in those health inspections and on-site sewer management areas. Haven't been able to achieve the inspections coming through. 152 is if we just like to scrap that page, that's snuck in there unexpectedly. 153 emergency housing on page is got a small vote coming through in regards to a bit of additional contributions from the Upper Hunter homeless. So we secured an extra 10,000 towards the security infrastructure on the facility over there. So that's more or less gone back into the RA for the emergency housing. Overall, we're in front of budget, but it's mainly due to that extra contribution coming through.
Is there any in that space there? So we're getting that from Hunter. Is there any state funding on that sort of arrangement at the moment?
No, we don't receive any funding from the state. Upper Hunter Homeless manage the facility. So we will bill them on a quarterly basis as like an agency fee. Okay. So that's our revenue that we get from that facility next door.
And I understand, through you, Chair, Mr. Chair, the Upper Hunter Homeless Support, I think they get funding from the government.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, great, thanks.
Moving into our next area there, which is our low income housing on page 154, no votes or surrenders coming through here. And we're pretty well spot on target overall. A little bit under in our revenue streams from our rentals, but our building maintenance is also down. So they're offsetting each other. Public cemeteries on 156, no votes or surrenders coming through here. A little bit behind budget today, and it's mainly due to our lower revenues that we've got from plaques, columbariums and interment fees. So it's one of those ones that we just have to bide and wait for people to utilise the service. Moving into our KPIs on pages 157 to 158. We've got one red indicator and a green indicator coming through. The red indicator obviously is in regards to a bit of our capital works program. Moving into our public conveniences on 159, no votes or surrenders coming through here. A little bit overspent at the moment, just in our servicing and maintenance of our facilities in our parks and venues that we have. So we'll be continually monitoring that as we're coming through to the end of the year. Moving into our KPI side of things, on page 160, no votes or surrenders. No, it's a green indicator there, I beg your pardon. So we're meeting our KPIs for the public conveniences. Moving into street lighting on 161, here we've got a small surrender going back into an RA for street lighting. The project at Venica Street with the pedestrian crossing lighting. We removed it out of the capital works program at the moment and bringing that back in for next year, which we'll couple with a bit more funding. We just need a little bit more money to undertake that work. Our overall in our year to date, we're underspent at the moment in our electricity costs, which is great. So we're hitting the mark. So hopefully the LEDs will see that come down even further.
Yep. Just a curiosity, if I may, the traffic lights down the main street. Do we currently maintain them, or is that currently RMS?
They're currently maintained by RMS.
And at such time we take over that main street, do we take over the costs of maintaining those, or that remains with RMS?
I'll refer that to the project manager looking after the CBD revitalisation.
Beautiful.
Hello, Mr. Chair. My name's Graham Wilson. I'm the Strategic Project Manager. The answer is no. I believe that remains with Transport for New South Wales.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Moving into town planning on pages 163 to 164. Here we've got a little surrender going through. I beg your pardon, a vote going through, just with some additional planning consultants fees, obviously with our area there that's well and truly under-resourced at the moment with vacancies. So we've had to engage a few consultants to assist us with getting through the workflow. And also we've got a small vote going in there for our Scone flood warning system. So we've had to do a few repairs and increase the maintenance of the rivers after the recent flooding events. So we've had to put a little bit of money into there. So on the bottom line, it'd be offset against other areas within the budget. So obviously the overspend there has been in regards to those two areas that we put the votes in for. KPIs on 165 through to 167. We've got 3 green indicators there. So we're meeting the workflow coming through even with those vacancies on tap. 168 building control. Here we've got the bit of an offsetter against those couple of votes we put through. So we've got some surrenders going through. We've got a bit of additional revenue coming through from our construction certificates. Plus also we've had a few savings, obviously, with our vacancies in the building services area. So we've got a couple of surrenders going through, which is effectively the amount of money that's the underspent in the bottom line to the end of March. KPIs on 169 to 170, 2 green indicators there, so it's nothing to highlight there. Quarry operations on 171. Here we've got a deferral of 100,000 going back into the RA, and it'll come back in for next year. Just with our compliance work that we're doing at the moment for the Kewen gravel site, we're still going through the process of DAs and so forth. So we've got a number of consultants that are reviewing the compliance issues in regards to that site, so that they'll be finalised early next financial year. Overall, year to date, we are a little bit behind budget at the moment, but as indicated in the summary pages, our quarry revenue is down by about $80,000, which is where we're a little bit behind budget. Overall, green indicator from the KPI side of things on 172. 173, animal control, no votes or surrenders coming through, and pretty well spot on budget overall, so nothing to highlight there. At the moment on our KPIs on 174 to 75, we've got 1 amber and a green indicator, so nothing to highlight there. Emergency services on 176 to 177, no votes or surrenders coming through. Here we're a little bit underspent coming through the mix, mainly due to the capital works that's being undertaken in that area on the Scone Emergency Operations Centre. So it's just a timing thing in regards to that, the underspend. So apart from that, nothing else to highlight there. And on our KPIs, we've got 2 green indicators there, so nothing to highlight there. Fire service and protection. Here we've got a few votes going through. We've done some initial pre-construction work at the Bow, Castellis and Gummin fire sheds, with the expectation that the service will implement those sheds going into the future at those sites. So the other offsetter against that is the RFS will provide us grant funding for that work that we've undertaken by the year end. So we'll be invoicing those for that. Overall, we're nearly spot on budget, so nothing to highlight there. LG regulations and enforcement on 182. Here we've got a small surrender that offset the 2 votes going through in the planning area. So just a bit underspent in our salaries area for our nuisance and health side of the business. Overall, we're a little bit in front of budget, which is quite good. Just with our swimming pool regulations, we're under budget in our salaries there due to the staff vacancies. So we've got a little bit of a saving there. Our KPIs on 184, here we've got a red indicator, but we probably just need to review that because I think that should more or less be a green indicator. I think based on the 36 to 34 would give us above the 90%. So we might just need to review that number there. So that should be one that's green. Moving into our community centres and halls on pages 185 to 186. Here we've got no votes or surrenders coming through. We're nearly spot on budget overall, just a little bit underspent by about 5,000. Capital work side of things, we're a little bit underspent at the moment. So the Miranda War Memorial Gates has been completed and for less than the budget allocation that's been applied. But the offsetter against that is we've had a little bit more expenditure in our public halls and Old Court Theatre. So we've had to upgrade those facilities because they were getting very tired. And to be utilised, we needed to do some emergency works. Moving into our KPIs on pages 187 to 188, got a red indicator and a green indicator. And obviously the red indicator is, as highlighted before, with a COVID-related hall hire side of things. Cultural services on 189 through to 190. Here we've got more or less some surrenders going through. With the postponement of the Kiora Music Camp, we've pulled out all our revenue and expenses and pushed those back through to for next year's camp to be held. So we've just removed those out of the mix. Overall, our position is that looks like we're a little bit overspent, and it's mainly due to our revenue stream. So our revenue streams there are Kiora Music Camp related. So obviously we've just done the votes to clear that out. Apart from that, we're pretty well tracking okay. Moving into our KPIs on 191, a green indicator there, so nothing to highlight there. Museums on page 192, no votes or surrenders coming through here, and we're nearly spot on budget overall, so nothing to highlight there. Other sport and rec on 193. Here we've got a couple of votes going through. We received a little bit of extra funds coming through for the Tour de Miranda event that was held over there. And that's offset against, excuse me, the costs associated with the cycling events. So the revenue we generated will go straight back into the event itself. The other item there is a strength of life program, which the cost of the program is a little bit higher, which comes out of the RA. So it's offset from funds that we'd already received coming into the mix. Overall, we're a little bit underspent, mainly in regards to our admin costs in regards to our other sports programs. So apart from that, nothing else to highlight. Moving into our KPIs on 194 through to 196, we've got 3 green indicators there. So everything's tracking along quite well in regards to that service. Moving into our parks and gardens on 196 through to 198. Here we've just got a deferral of a project for the Amaroo Parks play space. We anticipate that we'd get further along with this project by the end of the year, but unfortunately we've had a few delays. So we've deferred a major portion of the project to be completed into next financial year. It just goes into an RA and comes out for next year. Overall, we're
Sorry, Mr. Phelps. I was just going to question the Amaroo Park. What's our program there? When do we envisage that we're going to start that program? And
overall, through the chair, I believe that we've actually commenced doing all the design and everything. So I would think in the first half of next financial year, we should be able to undertake and complete the rest of the project.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you.
Moving into our KPIs side of things, as I said earlier, 3 green indicators there. Oh, no, wait up. The indicators for the parks and gardens. So the parks and gardens on 199 through to 200. Here we've got 1 green indicator and 1 red indicator. The red indicator for the parks and gardens area has more or less come around by the customer requests of unsatisfactory cleanliness. Major issue there is probably the weather events that we've been having and the growth in the ground. So obviously we need to address those coming through so we can get on top of our maintenance.
So that cleanliness is just excess lawn clippings and the like, is it?
Yes, through the chair, I believe that's what it is.
Yep. Was down at Aberdeen through the week, and the guys down there have done a fabulous job. Looks like they're getting back on top of it, so that looks really positive.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving into our next service area there, which is our public libraries on 201 through to 202. No votes or surrenders coming through here. A little bit underspent at the moment, mainly in regards to our admin area in our salaries and training costs, plus also in our general expenses where we've got a lot of book purchases happening. So over the next quarter, you'll see a lot more book purchases coming through to bring that back up into alignment with the budget. Moving into our KPIs on pages 203 to 205, we've got 2 green indicators and 1 red indicator. So obviously the number of organised consultations with the community regarding the collections, a little bit behind. So we're looking at trying to invigorate that to try and have a few more consultations with the community for the library collection. Moving into our sporting grounds and venues on pages 206 to 207. Here you'll see that we've got a few votes going in, mainly in regards to some grant funding we received. So we received some grant funding for the Bill Rose Master Plan and business case, and also the Merriwell Showground upgrade of some facilities over there from the Crown Lands Department. So we've brought both of those projects into the mix, thinking that they will be completed by year end. Overall, we're a little bit in front of budget at this point in time, and it's mainly due to the grant funding we received for Bill Rose as well as the Merriwell Showground area. The offsetter against that grant funding, a little bit higher in costs in regards to service and maintenance of our sporting grounds and facilities to date. So obviously that's something that we'll need to monitor over the course of the next three months. Moving into our KPIs, again, we've got 1 green indicator, 1 red indicator. And again, probably the one to highlight is in regards to the customer request of unsatisfactory ground conditions. Obviously with the weather factors coming through has made that those complaints come into the mix.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair. I thought we were getting some sort of community group that was going to organise areas where they will take care of certain areas to alleviate the stress on staff and let them be able to get to it. Where are we up to with that?
That's the volunteer program.
Yeah.
Yep. Haven't progressed, but we'll put it in the Depop for next year.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving down into swimming pools on pages 210, 211. Here we've got a small vote going through just in regards to the refurbishment of the sand filter, which was a little bit higher than we anticipated. So we've more or less brought in a vote there. Overall, we're a little bit behind budget by about 50,000 K. Money in regards to maintenance of both Miranda and Scone. So we're going to review those costs coming through and see why we're overspent in those areas. Moving into our KPIs on page 212, a green indicator there, so nothing to highlight there. White Park Complex on 213 to 214. Here we've got the $50,000 funding coming through for the Bill Rose Complex business case that we're undertaking. So to beg your pardon, yes, the White Park, excuse the indiscretion there, Mr. Chair. For the White Park Complex, we've got some grant funding coming through for the White Park Complex business case, which we've brought in as a project down in the capital expenditure area. Overall, we're nearly touching on par with the operations there. So obviously, it's something that we'll be reviewing going forward.
With the sorry, Mr. Phelps, with the 50,000 there for the business case, what does that entail?
Yeah, we were successful in getting a grant for the development of that centre, and we've engaged a company called Morrison and Lowe. So they've just commenced. So they're at the stage of just getting data together, consulting with the user groups and all the various stakeholders. The purpose of that is to enhance the commercial opportunities within the centre and really look at what potential events could be attracted to the centre, and just getting it to not just a break-even position but to make a profit and return a dividend back to council. It's looking at things like future camping, electricity upgrades and things like that. So it's going to set the future of White Park up for the next couple of years.
Oh, great. Just on timeline of that, have we got some sort of timing on that?
We were looking to have the study completed by the 30th of June. It may go into July.
July.
Okay, moving into our next service area, which is airports and underneath transport, on 215 to 216. No votes or surrenders coming through here. As you can see, we're a little bit in front of budget to date. Obviously, the effect of the capital expenditure underspend at the moment is helping that area. And as highlighted in the summary pages there, our user fees are down by that $110,000. So we need to look at those areas. The other two major factors in this service area is the commencement of operations of the Hunter Warbirds Aviation Centre and also the Warbirds over Scone. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll be going through and have a look at the actual where those operations will sit when we look at the overall business services review forecast to the end of the year. Moving our KPIs on pages 217 to 219, 3 green indicators there, so nothing to highlight there. Moving into bridges on pages 220 through to 222. Here you'll see a lot of surrenders happening. So obviously we've had a few delays in regards to the commencement of a lot of our bridge replacement program, which is the 9 bridges that we have on tap at the moment, being Little Street, Scotts Creek number 2, Scotts Creek number 3, Blues Bridge, and 5 Warlands bridges. So obviously we've got a new project scheduled from our contractor who was successful in the tender, and a lot of these projects are pushing out into be delivered in the first part of next financial year. So he's given us a program where they'll be completed by December 2022. So hopefully he'll keep to that schedule.
Yep. Just on a couple of bridges there, you spoke of Alla Bridge before. What's our progress on that, and when do we expect to be able to utilise that again?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've raised purchase orders for commencement of the repair work on Allen Bridge. We received our first monthly or progress payment for that bridge. So we hope to have that done hopefully by the end of June without too much drama. So they're actually engaged to do and undertaking the work at this point in time.
So you'd expect it to reopen the end of June sort of
Would
thing?
hope so, but I'll take it on
Excellent.
notice and get further clarification of a date.
And my other little friend down here, the Dartbrook Bridge.
Yep.
We haven't seen much movement on it. It's a bit bashed up at the moment.
Yeah, Dartbrook Bridge is one that we're getting replaced underneath the replacement program that will be included in the second round of our bridges. So it's going to be fully replaced. So we'll only probably keep the life support system on it until such time as it's fully replaced.
Sure. Thank you.
The other bridge that we've got in there that we've deferred a bit of the money back out of is Miranda Street Causeway. Obviously, with the consultation phase again, in regards to that, we've moved that back in for next year to undertake those works. Overall, year to date, we're a little bit in front of budget, and the main reason for that is our maintenance area, which is the 115,000 underspent at this point in time. So it was for all the bridges, so it would probably remain underspent and be utilised as an RA for contributions towards future bridge constructions.
Yeah. Just going back to the Miranda Street Bridge. Now, do we? Is there an expiration on that funding, and when would that be?
The expiration. The funding for this one was effectively as a mine affected areas grant funding, and it was with Muswellbrook Shire Council. So it was bundled up with a number of other projects from Muswellbrook Shire Council. The expiration date of that is probably passed by about 18 months, I would think. However, we've been speaking to Restaff in New South Wales through Muswellbrook, and they're fully aware of what our position is in regards to the Miranda Street, and we're getting extensions of time to undertake the works.
Oh, congratulations on that communication, and hopefully we can get some sort of resolution there shortly.
Yeah,
I'm sure we don't lose that money.
Well, that's been always the risk associated with it, with the delay in regards to the consultation phase that we've had and the change of the scope. The scope is the main thing that has been the issue. It's gone from a low-level bridge to a causeway, back to a low-level bridge to community consultation once again.
Just for the record, Mr. Chair, it's been out to community consultation 3 times. And every time it comes back 50-50.
Can we get a third person there?
Yes. Might be an idea.
Okay, moving down. So we can bring back a further report in regards to that funding, if you like, Mr. Chair, to the next meeting, just to give you a clarity in regards to the extension of time. Moving into our KPIs in regards to our bridge networks, we've got one red indicator and a green indicator. The red indicator is the completion of our capital works program. So obviously with all those votes and deferrals, obviously that's had the effect there. Footpaths and cycleways on pages 225 to 226. Here we've got a surrender coming out of our capital grants area of 350. Which is offset against the Merriwa extension. There's been delays in regards to the commencement of that work. We'd hoped that effectively nearly half the project would have been completed by the end of June. However, due to those delays, we've deferred the majority of the money into next financial year for that work to continue. The other item in there that we've done a vote and a surrender for is we've moved the money from our curb ramp upgrades and moved it into the footpath at the Scone VIC area, which was required. Overall,
Just a question on that. Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Where is that work being done?
it's the pathway at the VIC off the road along Susan Street.
So it's on Susan Street. So it's not on Kelly Street. Okay.
Moving into our KPIs on pages 227 to 228, we've got 2 red indicators here for our footpath area. So obviously our capital works program is behind because of the project I just spoke about. And also we've got a few customer requests regarding unsafe conditions of our footpath surfaces. So obviously the infrastructure guys are definitely looking into and monitoring those footpaths at the moment. Moving into local roads on pages 229 through to 232. Here you'll see a lot of votes and surrenders starting to happen as well. So these are a lot of the bulk of the votes that we looked at earlier. First off is the grant funding coming through for the advanced funding for the flood damage disaster relief. And the offsetter against that is effectively our rural roads unsealed network, our urban street sealed area, plus also you'll see shortly some money going down into regional roads as well. So it's all our additional works that we had to do for flood mitigation works. The other big movements in this budget, this service area, is our capital works program. So we've gone through and reviewed all our capital works in the local roads space, and we've got a number of surrenders of deferrals going back into next financial year, being Barrington Forest Road, the stages there, stage 1 and 2. We've identified Hackett's Lane as being our initial seal program for $80,000. So we've removed it out of the village initial seal and moved it into Hackett's Lane and Miranda. A few budget allocations for Hunter Road design works for narrow court and shallow crossing. Curb and guttering renewals in Main Street. We've extended our previous monies that we put into that program for the curb and guttering at Main Street and extended it out further. So we've moved $100,000 from our renewals area. Moonham Brook Road is still in initial design and survey works. Its tender should hopefully go out before the end of June. So it will get into construction phase early next year. Pages Creek Road, we've done some initial design and survey works there, so we've had to bring in some money for that. The Urban Streets curb and gutter renewals, that's the one that's gone to the Main Street in Miranda. Ringwood Road, Ringwood Road is fine. Renewal Road, we've deferred the final lot of works into next financial year. Our rural roads reseal is what we discussed earlier. We've deferred those funds and put it into an RA for future road projects. We've had a bit of saving in regards to Stafford Street and Liverpool Street, so that's just gone back into as surrender. Urban Street renewals, again, gone into the RA for future roadworks. And as I mentioned earlier, the Village Street renewals, we've surrendered that money into Hackett's Lane and Miranda. So as you can see, there's a lot of movements in that space happening. Overall, you can see there that we're underspent year to date by about $500,000. Sorry, we're underspent by $500,000. Main drivers behind that is our funding that we received from the flood damage, which is $1 million, but we've also got overspends for our flood emergency works that we've undertaken.
And we'll, of course, put all our pipes in before we do any more reseals on those jobs.
Precisely,
Exactly.
Mr. Chair, precisely.
On that.
Moving into our KPIs on 233 through to 237, I believe, 237. Here we've got 1 green indicator and 4 red indicators. So as you can see that the area is probably needs to increase its productivity. There's some red indicators there that are going to won't be able to change before year end, being the reseal program. Obviously the reseal program is now completed, so obviously they will remain red, but there's some in there that are regards to inspections and so forth, which we should be able to achieve before June. Okay, moving into regional roads on pages 238 through 239. Here, again, we've got a number of votes going through, moving the money and deferring a few projects. First of all, we've got a surrender of some grant funding, which is more or less our R2R project that we had picked out for Glenbourne and Main Road 105 intersection. That won't take effect until next year. It hasn't fallen off the books, but it will continue. It's one of... You're right there, Mr. Chair, you're just trying to work out where it is.
I'm just trying to work out which one that is, because there's one in that particular area that would really kindly need a realignment. I've had injured people there before, and it's a bit confusing. So
yeah.
I'll keep an eye on that.
I take it on notice and find out exactly which intersection is, because there's two going out past those areas there. There's one going into the triangle on the other side of the triangle.
Yep.
At Gundy Road there.
Yeah. And there's a crossroads after
Correct.
that.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll get the actual precise location of where that intersection is for you. So effectively that project will be deferred until next financial year. We've got a vote going in for the regional road maintenance, being the flood damage works that we've undertaken. Another item there going down into the capital works side of things. We're doing some culvert subsidence upgrades along Bunnan Road and Main Road 62. So we've effectively brought into there the repair program from below there, which is the repair program works for $100,000, and we've coupled it up with $50,000 of culvert subsidence money that we'd allocated in local roads. So it's well worth doing. The other items in there that we've deferred is the final lot of the budget that we had in there for Colson's Creek with the rehabilitation of Main Road 358. That will just be deferred until next year. We've done all our works that we can do out there for the current financial year. And the other item there is the reseals, as mentioned earlier. So that'll go into an RA moving forward. Overall, we're a little bit underspent in this area, which is mainly the capital works funding. So apart from that, there's nothing to highlight there. Moving into our KPI side of things, we've got two green indicators and one amber and one red. And the red indicator is effectively in regards to the reseal program. So obviously that will remain red by year end. Moving into our next service area there on 244, which is the state roads. No votes or surrenders here. We're a little bit overspent at the moment by about 40K. Here, as mentioned earlier, our revenue streams are down, but also our costs associated with individual price works orders are down. So they're offsetting each other. The item that's up there is our general maintenance works and our emergency incident response works. We'll recover that through the normal routine maintenance funding, which Transport provide for the Golden Highway. So that should bring that back up into alignment. Moving into our KPIs on pages 245 and 246, two green indicators there, so nothing to highlight there. Moving into transport auxiliaries on 247. Here we've got, and this is where we'll cut over to our new handout, because the second half of this one is moving into that area. So on the very first page of that handout, which starts off at Appendix 1 on the online version, is the removal of funds from the town revitalisation and also St Albans Town Square Green area. So we've just moved those into next financial year. So we've reviewed our program schedule and deferred those costs coming in for next year. KPI side of things on our on the next couple of pages there, Appendix 2 and 3. We've got two red indicators there. So the first one should really be an amber, because I think that should end up being 88%. So, but our second one is with our traffic signs and line marking may struggle to meet the actual KPI by the end of the year, because a lot of the line marking related to the reseal program. So obviously we'll review that and see what we can do. Moving into our next area here, which is our water supply area, and that will start on appendix number 4. Here we've got a number of votes happening again. So we've gone through our water services areas, and you'll find in the three localities that we've got a number of votes and surrenders happening. Our first one, which is Merriwall, here we've got a surrender of $102,000 in our user fees. Obviously, with the lower usage of water due to the weather conditions, so we've more or less put that back to an RA. The other offsetters against that lower revenue streams is the capital works area. So we've put a lot of surrenders in regards to the mains renewals and new mains extension area there, our meter replacements, plus also treatment plant minor works and also minor reservoir works. So there's been no works required in those areas, and all it means is that we've allocated those funds during the year. If they haven't been used, they just go back into its RA for future works to be undertaken. So it's just more or less moving those back into in for next year's works program. Our overall position is we're well underspent here, which is our capital works program. So obviously it's well underspent. Runway Water, here again with our user fees, we've put a surrender in here for $30,000. This starts on appendix number 5 and through to appendix number 6. Here again, you'll see we've got a lot of surrenders coming through for our mains renewals, our mains extensions, and also our meter replacements as well. So they're just regular items that we put in every year. So they've gone off to the RA. Another couple of items there that we are underspending by the end of the year will be the Miranda Pipeline. So we've got a number of easement acquisitions that are continuing. And we think that they'll probably roll over into next financial year before all the legalities are completed. So we've moved that back into the RA for the pipeline. And the village retic, obviously there's a lot more further consultation meetings being undertaken for the village reticulation systems. So obviously we won't be spending too much more money this year, and possibly we'll move that to next year. But apart from that, everything else is pretty well tracking along okay. Water supplies in Scone and Aberdeen. Here we've got a number of surrenders again coming through. Our first one there is our capital grants received. So with delays in a capital works program for the UV chlorination project, we've surrendered the 77,000 towards, which is DPI money, which is 50% of our project. So we've just deferred that until next year. We've received a bit more contributions towards our Section 64s and our rural water connections along the pipeline. So we've brought that in as a vote. We've had additional private works requests. So we've brought on the 15,000 as additional revenue. The other side of that is our expenditure has gone up by 15,000 as well. Rates and charges a little bit up there. So our access charge is a little bit higher. So we've brought that back into account. And then the user fees has dropped back down again. So we've made a surrender there for 165,000 for lower water usage over the first 3 quarters. Moving into the our operation expenses, as mentioned with the private works, we've got the 15,000 going in there for the additional revenue streams. Capital works is where there's a lot of surrenders coming through, again, just with the deferrals. So our rural water is deferred until next year. Our replacement of the high tower tanks, we're actually doing emergency works there now, so we've brought in a vote for that works. The ICWM, which is the Integrated Water Cycle Management Plan, the consultants are still working on that, so that's been now deferred until next year.
Just on the, just on the Aberdeen Tower, what emergency works is happening there?
I'd have to probably take that on notice. I'm not fully aware of what we're actually undertaking in that space, so I'll take that on notice and get a clarification for you.
Yep. And that, the project for the new pumping station, what's the time frame? You got a,
With the raw water.
Yeah.
I'll take that on notice as well. I'll
Thank
find
you.
out what that is.
yeah, sorry.
So then the other items there that have been surrendered are effectively the items that, as mentioned in the other localities, being the mains renewals, meter replacement, reservoir repairs, the mains extensions. But also we have a couple of the projects in there that have been backed out as well, which is our Scone water treatment plant. We were hoping to have a concept design completed by year end. Unfortunately, we've had a few delays in those design works. And the other one that I mentioned with the grant funding was the UV and chlorination. Again, we've had some delays experienced with our design works that we're undertaking in that space. Overall, we're a little bit in front of budget, and it's mainly the underspend we've got in capital expenditure coming through. So moving into our KPIs, and I think that's will be on appendix number 9, I think. It's got 1 amber and 2 red ones. So from appendix 9 through to appendix 11. The red indicator is in regards to delivery of a capital works program. Obviously it's behind, so we've got a red indicator there. And also complaints about a poor water quality. So we've got 5 complaints compared to a target of 4. So obviously we need to work out what those complaints were. Apart from that, nothing else to highlight there.
Just on that, and I'm sorry that I'll probably direct this better at Karen, but it seems to be very seasonal, that graph there. And if I could maybe put that question on notice, perhaps.
Yep, we'll take that on notice, definitely. Moving into sewerage on appendix number 12. Here we've got some votes and a couple of surrenders happening again. So movement of some extra contributions from section 64, which has gone off into an RA. Lower trade sewer discharge fees. So we've surrendered $4,000 there. And then the other movements have been in the capital works area. So our Castle sewer system, we've had some additional costs in regards to the completion of the detailed design works. So we've brought a vote into play there. But then we had a deferral of the STP renewals, which there's been no works required to be undertaken in that space. So that's gone back into the RA coming through the mix. Overall, we're a little bit underspent in this area again, mainly due to the capital expenditure area. Moving into our next area there on appendix number 13. We've got the Miranda sewerage. Here we've got some votes going through and surrenders again. A little bit extra in commercial annual access charges. So we've put a vote in there for $3,000. We've only had a surrender in regards to our Runway mains renewals and replacements with only minor works expected. So we've backed out $20,000 there. And we've had a new mains extension project that's been undertaken. So we put a vote in there for $36,000. So we're undertaking that works. And this one is actually overspent to date. And the main reason for that is that the capital works expenditure is there with the emergency, the new mains extension project that we've undertaken. Moving into sewerage services in Scone and Aberdeen. Here again, as mentioned in the other localities, we've got a number of votes and surrenders happening. We've got some contributions happening for additional section 64 contributions that have gone to the RA, the restricted asset in regards to contributions. Bit of extra residential access, sewer access charges. So that's just gone back into the restricted asset. And we've had also a bit lower in our sewer discharge fees coming through. So we've got that money coming back out, going back through the RA. The other side of that is we need a little bit of extra funds put into our in the operation expenditure area for sewer other. we've just more or less taken out some contract insurance in regards to our relining program. So that was about $3,000. So we brought that back in as a vote into the mix. The big item, the big items in the Scone area, again, is in regards to the capital works side of things. Here we've got our rock flume at Aberdeen. It's been now completed. It was a little bit overspent. The air park pump station is now being deferred until next year, the completion of that, just with the delays with the finalisation of the airport. So we've just moved that into next financial year. The ICWM, which is the Integrated Water Cycle Management Plan, again, it's in both the sewer and water areas because it looks at it on a holistic basis. So we've moved that money and deferred that into next year. STP renewals, mains renewals, and the sewer pump station renewals. Again, there's been reduced expenditure in those areas required to be undertaken. So we've moved those back out into our RA. Overall, year to date, we've are underspent in this area, in the this service area by about 220,000, of which the capital works expenditure is underspent. So that's the main reason there. Next on appendixes 14, how about 15 through to 18, we've got 4 red indicators. So obviously we need to, I'm a little bit out in my appendixes, I think there, but we've got 4 red indicators for the sewer area. So obviously we need to review a number of these KPIs and see whether or not we're going to achieve these by year end. So it's a couple of them are in relation to capital works, and there's also some customer complaints ones in there as well, which has been really determined a lot by the flooding. So obviously we've had the complaints for the sewer network over November and December, which was our flooding event, but it's also the percentage of treated effluent coming through from recycled effluent. So it's also had a weather effect attached to it. Moving then down into the summary of all our capital works expenditure. So this more or less just provides you with a summary overall of all our capital works broken out from the service areas, and it indicates there that we've done 64% of our capital works, revised capital works program to date. So obviously we've still got about 10 million to spend. So that's just for your information. That does also have in there the requested votes and surrenders as they sit. Any questions?
We're going to go back to corporate services 4.2. On the recommendation there,
I'll move that.
We'll move on to. Sorry, we'll move on to corporate 4.3 on community strategic plan.
Just with the contractors.
Oh, sorry, the contractors expenses report. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report is more or less indicating the contractors listing of contracts entered into above $50,000 that and also the consultants' legal and other expenses report. So we've just got a couple of schedules in there. The first one is the consultants and legal costs. So more or less just an indication of where we're spending our dollars for the consultants and legal matters. And the next page is a nil report because we haven't entered into any contracts over the $50,000 in the past month or the past quarter, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. So that's just for your information.
Very good. We have a mover on that. I'll second that. We'll move on to corporate services 4.4. Terrific. So the Scone Airport project update. If I could hand over to Mr. Wilson there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just like to go through this report. I haven't been through it before, so I'm not sure how much detail you normally have. It is a report on the airport project. Stepping through the schedule and program is red, and that's primarily for two reasons. One is because the contractor has spent longer than we expected to complete the terminal building, which is now completed, and the museum exhibit. And the other item on there that has pushed that into the red is the runway seal has some issues and has not been resolved to date. Budget is in the amber because we haven't yet determined the runway issues and the cost implication to do with that. Variations are in the green. We've resolved all current variations on this matter. The other items are in the green, except the runway, which is an amber. It's a risk in this process. The progress for the month, there has been the pump house construction is primarily complete, but has a few issues that are now being resolved as defects. The landscaping is complete, except there's some fences around the front of the facility that haven't yet been put in. And the gate guardian is obviously missing from that process. Civil works on the air side, the fencing still is being installed and will be installed for another couple of months around the premises, around the airport itself. And there's also going to be some minor drainage works at the southern end of the airport as part of the wrap up of the works that Darracon did. Works that actually haven't started to date's the workshop that is going to occur on the northwest. That's still in the DA stage, and we hope to. Sorry, that's in the CC stage. We hope to get that out of the CC very shortly and commence that work. The shed itself, I believe, has been procured, so and it's on site. We've spoken about the critical issues of the runway. So airside has been completed. The Warbirds, as I said, has been running late, and it has an anticipated 25th of March, which has passed. They are currently on site rectifying defects to do with the facility. I will say there's a few minor things, like there's hangar doors that have some issues. The fire alarm system's currently in fault. There's the simulators still being put in, and there's a few issues with the filming in the theatre, but overall the facility is running well. Sorry, I'm just flicking over this report. I'm going to go to page 6 at the end. At this point in time, there is a remaining unallocated contingency of 50,000. However, that amount is likely to be required to resolve some of the issues that are facing specifically on the site. It's not expected that there will be any budget remaining at the end of this process. Are there any questions?
Yeah, just on the pump house there and the problems with it. Is it responsible for any fire suppression? Is that its main purpose in life?
Yeah, that's correct. So the pump house has foam and firefighting facilities as part of that process. It was commissioned over a month ago, so it is actually performing its duty. There's a few minor issues with some of the electronics and alarms and a few other things, but fundamentally it's in full operation.
Yeah, okay. So that so from an insurance point of view, we've got an operational
Correct.
fire system.
Yes.
Terrific.
Yeah, that's correct. I would more like think about it's about whether you hang the bracket on the wall and it's an official bracket or whether it's got a temporary bracket, that sort of thing. is now being rectified.
And just also on the contingency, have we got a breakdown of where contingency went to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can provide a breakdown of the contingency. It's in the major budget, so we can provide the variations and stuff that contingency was used upon.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I have one further thing to say that the runway, is that part of this report? The runway, there was a second inspection, engineering inspection of the runway by GHD. That work, they have provided a report. It's generally in accordance with the previous report that was undertaken by Cayman, who was our contractor who did the design of the works. And we are just trying to evaluate those two and trying to understand the way forward.
Okay, thank you. And when are we likely to see advice as to the way forward on that particular issue?
We're anticipating that will be over the next month.
Great.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, the foam that you spoke about in the pump house, I understand this is going to be a stupid question in the long run. That's not PFAS, is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the answer is no. We're not putting PFAS in.
No, good. I've had enough to do with that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just in terms of the contingency, probably the major item in the aviation facility was the fire suppression system, which wasn't identified in the original design due to the assumption that the aircraft would be static, but because they are fueled, there was a requirement to have a fire suppression system.
No further questions? All right, we've got have we got a mover for that? I'll second that. What are we up to here? So I think we've got corporate services 4.5 with, what have we got here? We've got questions from Councillor Abbott. Would you want me to read those through? Move that they're noted. Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll second that. And I think, are there any further questions, comments? All right, I'll call the meeting closed at 11:05. Thank you all.